Renee, hello everyone. My name is Olia. I lead developer experience at Rootstock Labs. Rootstock is the oldest, the longest running, and the first Bitcoin sidechain. What makes it super cool is that it is fully EVM compatible. So as a developer, you can use a EVM compatible toolchain and a lot of different super useful integrations. We've created this series in particular to walk you through some of the useful tooling and integrations to make sure that you are fully equipped for building on Bitcoin with Rootstock. Today, we have a very special episode. We have Isidro, who is on the Rootstock Labs team. He's a tech lead on the developer experience team. And he's coming back today. He'll be showing us something very important, and it is the C API that we have built in-house. So, Isidro, welcome back. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Oli. Thank you for your introduction. And yes, let me introduce myself. My name is Isidro. I work for Rootstock Lab. I've been working for the last 2.5 years, I think. And I am part of the DevEx team. So very nice part of the organization to be part of. And yes, I've been working on the Rootstock RPC API. So I'm going to explain a little bit what is this about and how you as a developer can use it and interact with the blockchain uh, with this. Let's start with the presentation. This is about the Rootstock RPC service. But let's start with a small introduction first, because we're going to talk about JSON-RPC methods, and I just want to briefly explain what is this and why we really need it and use it in blockchain. So we're going to suppose that this is the node of Rootstock. Of course, the blockchain is going to be made of multiple nodes that are talking each other and they have the same data. But we are going to simplify it and just have one node here, which of course is going to have all the blocks that happened in the history. And each one of these blocks is going to have all the transactions. So each node, we know that has from block 0 to the latest one, and we have all the information there. So, and as we know, Rootstock is an EVM compatible blockchain. That means that any developer could write a smart contract and then use it on Rootstock. But let's suppose I am the smart contract developer. I have my smart contract here. It's ready, but now I have to send it and deploy it into the blockchain. And we know we have two computer programs here because they know this is a computer program and they need to interact somehow. So the way that computer programs interact is through an API, which is an application programming interface. And this is what it makes the connection. It's a set of rules, of standards in which way both applications can interact. And using this API, I can deploy the smart contract and it's going to be stored in the blockchain forever. So that is good. But now also I want my users of my applications to be able to interact with that smart contract that I just sent. So suppose I have this front end for my application. It's going to be to require and also the API to interact. So we have the API, and this we can see as a full tab structure that it has a smart contract and some kind of interface or front end in which the users can interact with it. So we see that an API of a Rootstock node is essential, so the contract and the users can be deployed and used. But what is JSON-RPC? So there are different kind of APIs and different standards. And probably the most known or the one that many developers are used to is the REST API, that you can use on typical web apps. But in this case, the blockchain is used, which is called JSON-RPC API. JSON stands because it's a JSON object. This is sent into a package. RPC is a remote procedure call, and API stands for the application programming interface. So what is the standard look like? How? Well, we have first a request, and the request is going to be a JSON, and it is going to be including always different this same set of parameters: the JSON RPC version, a method name, the params that we are going to pass to the this application, and an ID which is optional but is very useful to match the request and response. And this response is going to be very similar. We get a JSON object with the version, the ID, and the result. In this case, we see an example that we are asking our node which is the latest block number by using the eth underscore block number method, and it's responded with in this case it's a number, it's a hexadecimal number that then we have to translate it to be human readable or decimal. But this is the raw response of a node. So how developers can use the JSON RPC API? Some examples is that, for example, as we saw.
Sorry, Isidro.
Yes.
Just can just go back for a second. I love how you kind of taken it from the very basics. It's really interesting. Could we maybe just summarize the differences between the REST API and JSON RPC API in terms of what you can do with the call, with the post and read, and kind of how that is different for blockchains with the RPC, with the remote procedure call? What are the other different actions, I guess, that are available?
Yes. So typically a REST API, it's going to have different verbs where you can post, put, or patch to an endpoint on the application.
Yeah.
So it's it's just that you have to follow a specific standard for using which verbs you can use and which endpoints you can interact with on an application. But in the case of JSON RPC, you are always using post method, and it's the only method that you can use, the only verb, and then you will have to always have this JSON object inside the method that you're sending through HTTP or WebSocket. So that's the main difference. It's a different standard. It's used like this way.
Yeah, nice one. Thank you.
Okay. So how developers can use the JSON RPC? As we saw, just one example, you can just get the block number. You can get the balance of any address. You can send transactions. You can call any function or method on a specific contract that you want. And how you can interact with any script, with curl from the console using Postman, or the easier way for developers will be by using libraries like Ethers, Foundry, or Thread, which they wrap all these JSON RPC methods under different implementations, so it's much easier to use on your application. And this is just one example of how you will use it using Postman, for example, or how is the request and the response. And you see that the request in this case is sending the eth get balance method with the address of the wallet that you want to ask for the balance and the block number. This is a convention, and there is documentation in which we explain everything on how to use it. And then you will see the response, which is just a number in hexadecimal. This is another example in which we ask for a block by its block number. And then we have a lot more information in this one because it includes much more data. Okay. Now, after that introduction, we can start talking about the Rootstock RPC service and why we have it. It's useful for developers. So if we go back to the example that we saw, that developer created an app and they need to interact with the blockchain, we know that through the API, they can interact with the Rootstock node. But the thing here is that you really need a Rootstock node to interact with. And it's not easy to find. There are no freely available for everyone to use for free different Rootstock nodes. So you need to probably, instead of using one of the public that there are none, you have to spin up your node and have it for yourself, and then you have to maintain it, which you will need to use resources, space, memory, and keep an infrastructure. So instead of using a Rootstock node or spinning yourself your Rootstock node, you can use the Rootstock RPC service, which is a service that is free to use for our developers. And it's very easy because you just have to register, get an API key, and then you can just start using the API to interact with the node. And how can you get started? Well, you just need to go to rpc.rootstock.io. You will create an account, get your API key, and then just use the API key in any library. Like in this case, we can see how you can use it with ethers. We just create a new instance of this provider by passing the URL with your API key. It's that easy as that. So to summarize, you should go to Rootstock RPC service website, click on sign up. Then you can look for the documentation and see that you will have all the methods that are available and how to use them. Then you will have your dashboard where you're going to have all your API keys, and you can get, if you click on one API key, you will get the exact API key and the URL in order to use it, and then you can start using it. And we're going to continue with a live demo in which we are going to see how this is done in as an actual developer. So live demo is that you're going to the Rootstock website, click on sign up or login, then you will get your dashboard. You will create a new API key. You can write any name that you want, like test2, select the network, and that's it. Now you have your API key, you can copy it here, and with this, we can use it anywhere. Even you have here an example that we are going to try. If I copy this code, I can go to the terminal, I can write it, paste it here, and we'll see that we have the response from the node with the exact response of that method. I could also use Postman, for example, in this case. You see that I have different methods here. I just need to copy the URL. I can paste it in Postman and then send it. And I have the response with everything which I need. And to just use any library. For example, in this case, we are going to be using a Python library, which is Web3. And we are going to interact with the smart contract very easily. In this case, this smart contract is already deployed to the blockchain, so we don't have to do that now. But I'm going to show that the smart contract is a pretty simple one. It's only a smart contract that stores a message, and we have two functions there. We can set a new message, or we can read the message. So first we are going to read the message, and we can see that here we have the provider instantiated with the RPC API plus the API key. So what we are going to do here is read the message, and we are going to execute Python get message.py, and we have a response, which is the message that is set on that contract. We could also, if you go to the Explorer, we see that specific address. This is the address of the contract. And if we go to contract interactions, we will see that we have also the greet and greet method, which is the read method. We are going to execute it, and we have that message also, hello world. So let's interact with it. We are going to store the different message. For that, we are going to use this other script. In this case, we can just write here a new message. In this case, for example, save it, and now we can execute. And now we have to wait for the blockchain to validate the transaction. And once the transaction is ready, we are going to have the new message set on the contract. Okay, we can see the transaction has been made. We have the hash here that we can also check in the Explorer, the transaction hash, and we see that the transaction was successful and it was executed to our smart contract. We will see that we have a new transaction, and if we go to the contract, we are going to be able to read the contract, read the message that we have stored there, and now it says hi. And if we do that with the get message from the Python, then we can also receive the what is being stored in that contract. So that is basically how we can use the RPC API to interact with our contracts and with different libraries. In this case, we just use the Python Web3 library, but we could also use Hardhat or Foundry or different tools that we have also available on Rootstock. And that's it with the demo and the explanation about the RPC API. I don't know if you have any question, Oli, about this?
Amazing. That was very cool. Thank you. Loved all the graphs also makes it very visual, so it's easy to understand. I have a question. You can potentially also use a public node, right? When you deploy something, what are the pros and cons of using the RPC service versus using a public node?
Yes, you could use the public nodes. The cons with the nodes is there are two things. One is that the public nodes don't expose all the methods, meaning that, for example, you could use it to deploy a smart contract, but then you're not going to be able to interact with using all the methods. For example, the method get logs is not there. It's not available in the public nodes, but it is available in the RPC API. And another advantage of the RPC API is that the information is cached. So most of the methods that are only they only read the status of the blockchain, they will respond much faster than the node. The node it's going to take much more time because it needs to take the response out of the blockchain itself. And those are probably the main differences. And that's why it's much more convenient to use the Rootstock RPC API.
I've got another question on this. Have you been with Rootstock Labs working with this project from scratch?
Yes, exactly. I've been working from scratch.
Very cool, amazing. How long did it take?
It took like around I think 8 months so between 6 to 8 months, because at the beginning I was there were not a lot of resources into this project. It started like a initial proof of concept, and we started to develop longer. But yes, I started from scratch this project, and then the team started to evolve, and we kept working on this. But we actually started this project because we saw that uh, there was this barrier for users that needed to interact with Rootstock, and they didn't have the Rootstock node for themselves. And there were some users asking us that they were launching their own nodes, and at that moment it took for them like 1 or 2 weeks just to need to synchronize the node and have it in a functional state. And when you start in a small project and you want to test things quickly, then it's not the best way to do it, because it you're shifting your focus into something different, and you should be thinking in your application and how to deploy it and how to do it, and that's it. You don't need to think on the node. But then after, if your application has been validated by users and you have a lot of users, you have now a bigger revenue, or you are, then that it makes sense that you have your own node and you have your own infra there. Of course, you can still keep using the RPC API, but it's a different situation. But yes, it was a barrier for our users, especially the new developers that wanted to port their applications into Rootstock. This is something that yes, solves what we could offer to them.
Nice one. Well, congrats. It's obviously a key piece of the infrastructure for the Roots network. And as we
Yes.
mentioned, there are other alternatives. So there are different solutions that I guess suit different size of projects and also different stages of the development of the project. So there's definitely a huge fit for this one. So thank you so much for walking us through. But if you folks have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Discord community server. If you haven't joined yet, please do join. Or yeah, you can reach out to us to the Devex. We're all next. We're on Discord, so come and say hi. Once again, Isidro, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much, and you have a good weekend. And then to our viewers, until next time.
Okay. Thank you, Ali.